Hey everyone, welcome and welcome back. My name is Chris.
And I'm Jose.
And we want to welcome you to I Married a Film Snob, where we review films of today and yesteryear. Today's video was made in collaboration with Inspicio Arts magazine. We'll be reviewing the classic and strikingly beautiful Days of Heaven, directed by Terrence Malick and starring Richard Gere, Brooke Adams, Sam Shepard, and Linda Manz. Stay tuned until the end to see our ratings, and as always, leave your comments down below.
Here we go, let's do it. Now, our local repertoire theater just gave us the opportunity to watch a classic Malek on the big screen. And boy, did it not disappoint. That's what we're going to cover here today, because if there was ever a filmmaker to watch on the big screen, it's Malek.
Yeah, there are few filmmakers as enigmatic as Terrence Malick, and few films as visually stunning and accomplished as Days of Heaven. With this, his second film, Malick elevated the visual language of film to its highest levels, allowing the semblance of a narrative to unfold, while at the same time creating a new way of telling story on film.
Now, more so than a conventional story or film, this movie is poetry in pictorial form, and it rewrites the rules of filmic language in a way that marked many filmmakers to come. This movie would define Malick's unique style, and its elements would continue to seep through in his later movies, with the use of elliptical storytelling, lush visuals, poetic voiceovers, and a continual fascination with nature in its purest form.
Set in 1916, it tells the story of Bill and Abby, lovers who traveled to the Texas Panhandle to harvest crops for a wealthy farmer, while pretending to be brother and sister to avoid any issues. Bill persuades Abby to claim the fortune of the dying farmer by tricking him into a false marriage. It is a love triangle of a woman loving two men and trying to keep her new husband from discovering her secret relationship.
Now, this is a weird and unusual thing to say about a film, but the premise, contrary to most films, does not hold that much significance in the grander scope of what the film achieves. And that's actually not a bad thing. In fact, it liberates it to explore a different form of visual language that is more romantic.
Let's address the most important and obvious element of the film first, the cinematography and visuals. The film is just pure beauty, with many scenes being shot in magic hour, that brief and gorgeous time of day after the sun sets, when there is still light right before it becomes night.
Although a touchy and complicated subject, the film was mostly shot by Nestor Almendros, but a good deal of shots were also composed by Haskell Wexler. Their command of understanding how to craft an indelible image in the mind of a viewer is akin to a master painter. Malick pushed for the use of natural light as much as possible and eschewed using artificial lights whenever feasible.
And speaking of master painters, there are visual nods to painters like Edward Hopper and Andrew Wyeth in the composition and framing of scenes, as well as how the lens captures light in a way that is painterly by design, and simultaneously always aiming for the highest visual beauty.
Yeah, if you were to look at paintings by Wyeth like Christina's World or Turkey Pond, you can see the inspirations Malick and Almendros drew on to create their vistas. Likewise, paintings by Hopper such as Coast Guard Station and House by the Railroad show the importance the film places on composition and knowing where to place the camera.
Oh yeah.
The sweeping landscapes and golden hues evoke a simpler time gone by.
In fact, the film opens with the oppressiveness and ugliness of modernity in Chicago, with shots highlighting how industrial, cold, and dirty city life is, which only helps to amplify and counterpoint the vast, lush, and beautiful landscapes of the Texas prairie that we encounter in the rest of the film.
Now, the best part of the film for me is how it balances striking cinematography and stunning compositions while also allowing the actors the freedom to break free from rigid script constrictions. You can tell Malick allows his actors to pursue a naturalness and free-flowing style that allows their acting to come off as more organic, more raw, unencumbered by a sense of performance.
True.
They are in the moment, and more so than channeling their characters, they are extension of their characters.
It's as if we're eavesdropping into their world, silently observing their lives unfold in elliptical moments of passing time. Richard Gere, playing Bill, is the most explosive and emotionally charged character, putting up a facade of strength to hide his vulnerabilities. He shines through with piercing gazes and fits of violence. His perfect counterpoint is Sam Shepard's farmer character, who is gentle and reserved, never showy, and a quiet observer.
Brooke Adams, playing Abby, is also great portraying a demure and subdued character with sad eyes and an earthly quality that make her relatable and grounded, providing a different form of feminine beauty than what we're used to in most movies. And lastly, Linda Manz's character of Linda is the heart of the film, a character that is totally etched from real life that gives no indication of falsity in her words and actions.
Tied into crafting that believability of the characters and the world they inhabit is the production design and costumes of the movie. Everything is period perfect. Nothing feels artificial. And getting those details right is harder to accomplish than most people would think. We hate when movies phone in period details and totally extract you from the world of the movie.
So this movie actually does a very grounded feel of what 1916 Texas probably felt like.
Right. And sometimes when costumes or uniforms are like very cookie cutter and each one is exactly the same,
Yeah.
you could just feel how ingenuine it is.
Well, you see in Abby's character throughout the movie at the beginning, her dress is torn and they never fix it. It continues to be shown because that's probably the only clothes she had while she was working in this farm.
Right.
And you see the same and they feel like they weren't added on it was like real tears that just happened to be there, or like as she was working or recreating some of the scenes of her working in the fields, it probably happened and they just left it there and it feels organic.
Right.
This movie, on the other hand, makes you feel totally convinced in every tangible aspect that's on screen. The clothes look like they have a real worn-in feel because costume designer Patricia Norris used old clothes and used fabrics to give them an organic look and avoid the clean and artificial look of studio-built costumes. The main house of the farmer feels like a real place as well, and not like a set, and that's because production designer Jack Fisk actually built a real house and authentically recreated everything inside and out. It was not just like a facade, as was the custom of other movies at the time, to just put the facade of the house and then they shoot somewhere else. No, the whole thing was a working organic thing. So while these elements are never the focus, they peek through in our subconscious, immersing us in the world of the film in a way that feels totally genuine.
Aside from the visuals, there are allegorical underpinnings that shine through. The most obvious being how the luminous and worry-free days come crashing to an end when the farmer discovers once and for all that he is being duped. This discovery of deception literally unleashes a plague that causes the perfection of their world to be destroyed in a blaze of fire. Symbolically, this plague of locusts and the firestorm that follows mark the end of an innocence in their lives, and their sins become personified by these calamities.
In a way, the movie has a very moralistic tone, showing the outcomes of lying and how deceit will eventually catch up. The flashes of violence in the movie are an important factor because they show a filmmaker who's aiming for beauty, but is also not afraid to show human realities when necessary.
True.
But it bears repeating that more so than allegorical, the film is poetic in how it unfolds and how the story is told.
Now, we've used this word a couple of times in this review, but Malek is a very organic filmmaker. And what do we mean by that? Well, he's very grounded with nature and feels compelled to highlight its beauty, not only in its lush landscapes, but also in its animal life. This movie makes it a point to show the variety of animal life that is always present. From birds to buffalo to ducks to insects, Malek's worlds and films are always teeming with life in all forms.
Yeah, Malek is actually notorious in several of his productions, several of his movies, to be just halt everything because a bird will fly by and he'll say, wait a minute, we got to focus on this, or there's
right, or a butterfly
or something, and he will stop everything just because there's something from nature that happens to appear or make
and interject.
and he's like, we got to get this is more like, but and everyone's on standby, all the actors and cinematographers are on standby, and he just like, no, we got to focus on. So he's very in tune with that of how nature is present, and he's, as a filmmaker, like able to capture that and how nature is teeming below the surface, and he's able to capture that in a way that most filmmakers overlook. Yeah, in this movie, there's even a time-lapse shot of a flower slowly growing inside the ground before crashing through the soil and blossoming. Mm-hmm. Nature, as much as the human characters in his movies, takes center stage in Malek's films.
Now, the dialogue of the film is sparse and minimal, but what does come through and would become a Malek trademark is the voiceover. Linda Manz's voiceover provides a semi-oblique commentary on the arc of the story and what's happening as the story progresses.
This farmer, he didn't know when he first saw her, or what it was about her that caught his eye. Maybe it was the way the wind blew through her hair.
Yeah, it's never like this happened and then this happened in the voiceover. It's more like these ruminations and kind of just observations that are kind of related to what's happening, but sometimes not really.
Right.
But they tie in somehow. So it's kind of, again, organic into how the story progresses.
Mm-hmm. And that's really what tied the film together and made it make sense. Instead of just being visual poetry, it made it more cohesive.
Yeah, the voiceover, it was necessary so for us to kind of fill in a little bit of what was happening. And the voiceover was a solution for Malek to overcome an editing challenge. Malek spent more than 2 years editing the film, trying to find the right balance of story flow and character development. And the more he, in the process of editing, removed unnecessary dialogue, the more he would rely on the voiceover to fill in any gaps. It works wonderfully and changes the dynamic of how most movies rely heavily on dialogue to progress the story. This doesn't do that.
Lastly, if the visuals were not enough to sweep you into the beauty of the film, the music is also remarkable. None other than great Ennio Morricone provides the film's score, and it is vibrant and lively, and it perfectly encapsulates the tone of the film at any given moment. And while mainly recognized for its visual power, the movie never forgets the other half of the equation in film. And the sounds and music merge perfectly with the sunsets and gorgeous sweeping landscapes.
There are a few American filmmakers like Terrence Malick. The man is a treasure, who has created a style that is totally his own, while also highlighting an independent American spirit of filmmaking. He is so outside the mainstream in his style because he's not crafting a movie. He happens to be crafting poetry that happens to fall within the medium of film.
Exactly. This movie shows just how far ahead he already was in only his second film under his belt. Essential viewing for any lover of film as a fully immersive and sensory experience. If you ever get the opportunities to see it on the big screen, we highly recommend it.
Yeah, you gotta watch it on the big screen. As you know, that's the most potent way to watch this film.
Yeah, it's definitely a must for us. And so, now for ratings of the film. What would you give it?
I'd give the film a 10 out of 10. Yeah.
What?
It's, it checks all the boxes necessary to make a classic and movie that stands the test of time. It has acting, cinematography, production design, music. Everything fits perfectly into this time capsule, and that is a movie from the 70s, but also you watch it now, it still holds up really, really well.
Yes.
And watching it on the big screen is just, for film geeks, it's akin to like a sacred religious experience, because watching Malek on a massive screen, it's you get swept in, you know, and
for sure.
and he doesn't. What I like, that little detail that he spent 2 years editing the film. He's not phoning it in. He's not there for the paycheck. He's really crafting something that's important to him.
Right.
That's poetic, and he's a director that cares about everything, and doesn't
Every element.
Yeah, every element he's very cognizant of. So when you get all that, great acting, great directing, great production design, great music, it creates kind of this perfect. And again, the story is important, but there's a thin semblance of a story. That's not the most important aspect. It's how it's told, and how the characters float through in passings of time. And the movie never makes it a point to. What's great about the movie is the in between the lines things that are sometimes not shown or not said.
Right.
And you're supposed to. That keeps you engaged because you have to kind of figure out what's happening. Time has passed. Things are never explained fully. You just kind of have to use your own deductive reasoning to figure out, oh, well, they got to this place, they're working, they're pretending to be brother and sister.
Mm-hmm. So the dynamic between Richard Gere and Brooke Adams is just done so well. It's just enough. It's not too hokey. It's not over the top, lovey-dovey. You know that there's a sexual tension, but it's subtle, And that's what I love
think,
most.
yeah, that angle is done very well. And then when she slowly starts falling in love with the Sam Shepard farmer character, it's done very subtly as well.
Yeah.
That's what the movie is good. It's these little subtle inclinations that it just hit, and then you have to figure it out on your own. And in the middle of that, then you're showing all these beautiful visuals and sunsets and,
animals and other workers, and
yeah.
it's beautifully done. It is really a painting come to life.
So how about yourself? What would you rate it?
So I would probably have to give it a 10 out of 10 myself, just because, again, every element was done so well. And in addition to everything we've already mentioned, this film is only 94 minutes, is it?
Yeah, it's like 90, barely breaks 90 minutes.
Yeah, and so it feels like an epic of a movie, but it does all of that in only 94 minutes. So it's almost like a condensed version of what much lengthier films have been able to accomplish in just a short amount of time. So I think to be able to master that is very difficult.
Yeah.
I would think. And another thing, Linda Manz, I absolutely loved her character. She was so authentic, so just real in her accent and her demeanor.
She's kind of the glue. Even though she's not the central character, she becomes, because of the voiceover and how he films her, kind of like the glue that holds the whole film together.
Right. She's really the protagonist of the film if you think about it.
Yeah.
She's the narrator. Even though the spotlight is on Richard Gere and
Sam Shepard and, you know, the
Yeah.
Abby character in the middle, and how
Yeah.
she's kind of struggling and falling in love
with both of them.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it really is a coming of age story, her story,
Yeah.
you know, and how her experiences shaped who she is or who she becomes, and how she, you know, she will take that experience and incorporate it. It shows that she's a very observant person, you know?
This was the first time we both got to see Days of Heaven on
Mm-hmm.
the big screen. And it makes that much more of a difference to watch a movie like this on the big screen with, I mean, cinematography by Nestor Almendros and Haskell Wexler. I mean, it's beautiful. It does look like an Andrew Wyeth painting come to life. It does look like an Edward Hopper painting come to life. So, I mean, how can you not like that?
Exactly.
So.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more Film Snob reviews.